When I tell you my small pea brain was blown. Hi friends, how are you? I hope that you're very, very well. So today I wanted to talk about Tick, Tick, Boom, which is the new musical on Netflix starring Andrew Garfield. It is the directorial debut of Lin-Manuel Miranda, of obviously Hamilton and In the Heights fame, and it tells the story of Jonathan Larson's life through his own words and his music, and it's all about his kind of fear of turning 30 and running out of time, and that clock that's ticking in our brains saying you haven't done enough yet, you need to have done more by your age. For those of you who don't know, Jonathan Larson is the writer of Rent, also of Tick, Tick, Boom. He tragically died when he was 35, and it was on the day of the first preview of the original off-Broadway production of Rent. So he never got to see kind of the fruits of his labours. He never got to see the success of Rent and the Tony Awards and Rent being turned into a major motion picture starring the majority of people who were in that original off-Broadway production, including, by the way, Jesse L. Martin, who actually worked with Jonathan at the Moondance Diner. Like, they were waiters together. I love that fact. And obviously he never got to see that his life has been turned into now another massive movie. So I fell in love with Tick, Tick, Boom when I was about 13 or 14, and I was obsessed with Rent at the time. It was like my favourite musical, and I therefore obviously needed to know more and more about the guy who wrote my favourite musical at the time. I even included bits about Tick, Tick, Boom in my high school coursework. I had to make a magazine, and I made a musical theatre magazine called Musicalicious, and I had like a Tick, Tick, Boom poster that you could cut out, and bits about the show and bits about Jonathan Larson. So it's safe to say that Jonathan Larson holds a very special place in my heart. So as I say, this musical is the words and music of Jonathan Larson. So he actually wrote a one-act rock monologue called at the time Boho Days, and performed it himself with two friends, and it's all about his life, his relationship, his friends, and the fear of time running out when you are about to turn 30. The movie actually begins with what looks like home videos, Andrew Garfield performing as Jonathan Larson this monologue, and they use it as kind of a narration to the musical and to move the plot along, and I think it's a great integration of that into the actual story of Tick, Tick, Boom as it is on stage. There are some clips on YouTube of the original Boho Days with Jonathan Larson, and to watch them side by side with Andrew Garfield and Jonathan together, it's extraordinary. So the musical kind of takes us along as Jonathan is leading up to his 30th birthday, and also the first workshop of his new musical Superbia, which is based on George Orwell's book 1984. This movie is a love letter to Jonathan Larson. The attention to detail, the Easter eggs, the reverence shown is so moving. I genuinely don't know who would have done a better job directing this musical than Lin-Manuel Miranda. His entire soul went into this movie, and you can feel it. Lin saw Rent on Broadway when he was 17. He then saw the original off-Broadway production of Tick, Tick, Boom in 2001, then went on to star as Jonathan in Tick, Tick, Boom in 2014. So again, it's very ingrained in Lin. It was something he cared massively about, and it's so easy to tell, and the love and admiration he feels for Jonathan Larson is palpable as a viewer. Something I really love as a fan who loves Broadway history and, you know, loves the real backstory and the tiny bits of detail. This movie is wonderful for spotting Easter eggs. I mean, I could genuinely sit here for hours and talk about all the Easter eggs and all of the cameos and everything, but I would be sat here for hours linking them all up. But it's so layered and it's so textured, and I just adore it. I can't really talk about this film without talking about how it has really touched me. It was a really interesting thing for me to watch this movie. Obviously, I've known the music for over 15 years. When you know a musical that long, it's kind of like in your soul or whatever. So cheesy. You know, it's so ingrained in there. And I knew the story, and I knew about Jonathan's death at the end, but this film hit me in a way that I definitely was not expecting. Eugene, I'm trying to be emotional. Sorry. So, I turned 30 this year. And I have to admit, I didn't take it well. I had a bit of a freak out the weeks leading up to my 30th birthday. And I think that the fear and the stress that I was like putting on myself, Jonathan Larson explains so perfectly in Tick Tick Boom that it honestly was like, somebody slapped me. I was watching it and I was like, I didn't expect to feel this way. What I expected to sit down and be like, oh, I love Ren and I love Jonathan Larson. And there I was, sobbing. It is so strange as well to listen to a musical that, as I say, you know so well. You know the story of and you know the melody, but you're kind of just enjoying it for the cute melodies and the lovely voices. And then to hear it as though you're hearing it for the first time in a way was extraordinary. There is something about being a creative person and pursuing a career in the arts, feeling like you're running out of time, and every year you know that there's hundreds of new people coming into the industry every year, and it's just getting more and more saturated, and the older you get, the less parts you're suitable for, and the older you get, the more stale you are, and you're thinking like, I'm not where I'm supposed to be at this age, and time does feel like it's running out, and you're comparing yourself to your peers or to those people that you admire, and you're thinking, why aren't I in that position, and why hasn't this happened for me? Very early on in the movie, Jonathan says, you stop becoming a writer who waits tables and you become a waiter with a hobby. Honestly, it felt like a punch in the stomach. We also see Jonathan like grappling with the ideas of, should I just give it all up? Should I go and find a well-paid job and, you know, have more financial security? You know, that real thing of like, is this the time that you finish it all? I was having these conversations literally not 2 months ago, and I'm still spending a lot of time ruminating on that. You know, you think, have I been holding myself back from better paid jobs and better opportunities on the off chance that I get a job and do something for 6 months or whatever, you know? Now listen, I'm not pretending that I'm sitting here as, you know, the same as Jonathan Larson, but I did just feel such a deep connection to it, seeing the film at this time in my life. I don't know, it touched something like very deep in me, and I know it's a bit embarrassing to admit all this or whatever, but listen, we're gonna get to more embarrassing stuff that this film has also brought out in me, so keep watching. Right, Andrew Garfield in this film is perfection. He is Jonathan Larson. There are genuinely times when you're watching it and you're like, is that a real clip? Is that a real clip of Jonathan Larson? Oh no, it's Andrew Garfield. Also, having watched the original clips and devoured every clip of Jonathan Larson that I could find online in the mid-2000s as a teenager, I feel like as a fan, Andrew Garfield gave me exactly what I wanted, if that makes sense. His voice is also brilliant. He said that he'd never really sung before this film. Let me just play my favorite bit. Did you hear that? I love it! Let me play it again. I'm sorry. I love that. I love it. I think he's amazing. Honestly, give him all the awards. He's so lovable as Jonathan, but he's also very flawed as well, and he's very real. And watching Andrew Garfield as Jonathan feels like watching a real person. It doesn't feel like watching someone playing a part. His performance is just faultless for me. Robin DeJesus plays Michael, who is Jonathan's best friend in the movie. Robin, me and other theatre kids will know from Camp. Honestly, one of the best theatre kid films ever, also starring Stephen Sondheim. Robin actually made his Broadway debut in Rent. He then went on to play Sonny in the Heights with Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's again wonderful in this film. So Michael in the movie is diagnosed with having HIV. It kind of plays into this time and running out of time and the pressures around that, and I'm so happy to say that the real person that Michael was based on, who did in fact have HIV in real life, is still alive and is doing well. And honestly, that, like, I'm gonna cry. It makes me so happy, and I just love that, and I wanted to share it in case you didn't know. Alexandra Shipp plays Susan, who is Jonathan's girlfriend in the show. I actually didn't know her very well. I saw her in Love, Simon, but I think that's it. She's wonderful. She's got a great voice. I think she's a really great match with Andrew. They've got such great chemistry together. Now, interestingly, the girl who Susan is originally based on wasn't ever happy with Tick Tick Boom and how she was portrayed in the show and how how Jonathan wrote it. She didn't like that Susan's storyline is basically that she like kind of wants to move out of the city and settle down and have kids and everything. The real Susan, her name's not Susan, but the real girl that it was based on is still in New York City today, still a dancer, and she didn't like that. Something that I really like in the film is that at the beginning, Alexandra Shipp does like a voiceover saying everything in this musical is real apart from the parts that Jonathan made up. I like to think that that is their nod to say, you know, this is his experience of it, but everyone's is different and there's two sides to every story and not everything is as it seems, and I just really appreciated that. This movie, as I say, is jam-packed with cameos. I mean, it's basically like every theatre person in New York City was in this film. That's how it feels. Something I also love, there's a long-running joke in the Broadway community that like big musical theatre Broadway stars kind of struggle to make that transition from theatre to screen, and I really like that there's so many theatre people in this film, and I think it's a great way that Lynn was able to get a lot of people who maybe wouldn't be in a Netflix film or wouldn't be in a major motion picture, giving them that film credit, and I really love that. One of my favourite cameos in the film is Bernadette Peters. Earlier on in the movie, Michael and Jonathan are sitting there watching the 1986 PBS recording of Sunday in the Park with George and talking about it and talking about Bernadette Peters and how amazing she is. And then in the song Sunday, it's basically Jonathan's homage to the theatre world. It's actually a parody based on the song of the same name from Sunday in the Park with George, and it's all filled with Broadway legends like Andre de Shields, Cheetah Rivera, B.B. Newirth, and so many more. And then Bernadette comes up and they have this really sweet moment. Oh! I loved it. It's just, simply put, it's perfection. Now, I have another embarrassing thing to tell you all. Okay, listen, I have never seen Sunday in the Park with George. I know, shame, shame, shame. I've never seen it, okay? It's one of those musicals that's just passed me by. I do like the song Everybody Loves Louie, but other than that, I really don't know the show, like, at all. But as I say, I grew up listening to Tick Tick Boom, and I didn't know that song was a parody. You know when someone says something and it sparks you to like sing a line of a song? I would say probably hundreds of times in my life people have said something and then I'll go, Sunday in the blue silver chromium diner. Even watching the film for the first time, I didn't realise it was a parody. Again, I just thought it was a song that Jonathan Larson wrote. And then a couple of weeks ago, Stephen Sondheim sadly died, and on the following Sunday, the Broadway community came out to sing this song, Sunday, from Sunday in the Park with George, and my brain was like, what? That's a Jonathan Larson song. That's embarrassing that I just admitted that on the internet. I'm a fake fan. When I tell you my small pea brain was blown, honestly, I've been singing In the Blue Silver Chromium Diner for years, not knowing it's a bloody parody. Speaking of Stephen Sondheim, he plays a huge role in this film. Sadly, the real Stephen Sondheim didn't make a cameo, but he was instead played by Bradley Whitmore from Get Out and so many other films. If I'm completely honest, I didn't love his portrayal of Sondheim. That could just be me being like extra picky, and because Andrew is so real as Jonathan that maybe I feel like he could have been realer, but I think I'm just being a bit picky, so ignore me on that. I do love that the movie shows just how much Stephen Sondheim nurtured new talent and would put in the hours to support new writers and was all about the future of theatre. Like, a lot of people were saying, why would you want to go and write a musical about the future? And Stephen Sondheim was like, no, I like it. I think it's a good idea. And the story of Sondheim somewhat mentoring Jonathan Larson is true, and I really love that that was honoured, and I also adore the fact that Stephen Sondheim got to see the film before he died. Oh my god, why am I so emotional today? I'm like, gonna cry. So Lin-Manuel Miranda was in the movie, and some people like to shit all over Lin, and I don't like that because he majority of the time will put himself in his work. The thing is, right, Lin-Manuel Miranda is not the best singer. I'm sure that he would admit it too. But in theatre, we are told if no one will cast you, write your own musical and put yourself in it. And Lin-Manuel Miranda has done that, and I have a lot of respect for that. I also really respect that, like, in the Broadway legend moment of Sunday, he could have put himself as a Broadway legend, because let's be honest, he is already, but he didn't. He put himself as like a cook in the kitchen, and I like that. I feel like quite a few people these days have a bit of a negative view on Lin, and it makes me sad because honestly, he is just a true theatre kid, like to the core. People make fun of him because he's cringy and over the top, and it's like, yeah, that's what theatre kids are. We are cringy and we are over the top. I also know that not everybody likes Rent, and I think if you don't like Rent, you would still enjoy Tick Tick Boom for the story of it, but also, like, I understand not liking the music or whatever. I mean, I love it, but I understand not liking it. I do also think, though, that Rent was revolutionary in so many ways, thanks to Jonathan. On Broadway, even now, but specifically back in the 90s, it was a place that really didn't have that many marginalized voices, and Rent brought in people with different gender identities and different sexualities, and talked about gentrification and poverty and racism and homophobia and the AIDS crisis when people weren't talking about the AIDS crisis on Broadway, and I have such a huge amount of respect for that. The movie as well feels like a love letter to New York City, and to like the real New York City in the late 80s, early 90s. I also really like that the film didn't dwell on Jonathan's death. So for those of you who don't know, he died of an aortic aneurysm and had been to 2 hospitals and asked for help, and they said, no, you've got the flu, you've got the flu. And if it was properly diagnosed, he could have survived. And that is tragic and awful. But I do like that the film didn't dwell on it. It was like, it gave a nod to it at the end with real footage of the time, but the film more celebrated his life, showed the life that he led, both the ups and the downs. And I like to think that him and Sondheim are now sat there, and Sondheim's like, hey, pal, your musical did get to Broadway, did get made into a film, and they're just sitting there chatting about musicals, and I bet they're having a great time. This film, I think, is wonderful. It is a bit weird, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I implore anyone to watch it if you already haven't. I honestly could talk about it for hours. It did have just such a deep emotional connection for me, but hopefully you enjoy it as well if you watch it. I would love to know your thoughts, and thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you next time.